The king has come into his hall.
Okay, so welcome to part 2 of this 2-part series on how to paint Dungeons & Dragons figures. I'm T.C. McCarthy, author of Germline, Exogene, and Chimera. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. Basically, what you're going to start out with is something like this. You're going to have a painted figure that's finished and ready to go, right? And in addition to that, you're going to need a couple of tools and some crafting supplies. I like to use these. They're little they're not toothpicks. They're just kind of little wooden sticks, and you can get them at Hobby Lobby. They're called craft picks, and get a bunch of those. Those help a lot in what we're about to do. Obviously, you're going to have a painted figure like this guy right here, and this stuff that I'm pushing around in this green little lid here, that's something called celluclay, and basically it's very, very, very finely ground paper mache product. You add water to that and you've got paper mache. But we're also going to add a little bit of something else to that in this case, and that's Elmer's glue. So make sure you have some school glue, Elmer's glue, whatever. That'll do the trick. And you only need a small amount, because look at this area that we're going to be covering. It's almost nothing. And then the last thing we're going to need for the beginning of this video at least is some sand and tiny rocks that you can go and collect outside. I just went out to my driveway, and where the rainwater kind of washes off, you'll typically find tiny rocks and sand particles. You want a diverse range of sizes, so just grab a couple of pinchfuls, and you probably can't see this, but in here I've got like anything from fine-grained sand to tiny pebbles and everything in between. And that's going to be for texture initially. So let's go ahead and get started. Step 1, mix your base. Mix your paper mache base right here. And what we're going to do first is just add a tiny bit of water. And we're going to start mixing, and what you want it to be kind of like oatmeal-ish texture. So the water has to be mixed in well with all the paper mache until you get something that resembles kind of clumpy oatmeal. Something you could actually shape in your hand if you wanted to, and I think I just put too much water in, but we'll see. Not a big deal. If you add too much water, you can just add more paper mache. I just don't want to waste any. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, so we're still mixing. And the reason you don't want it too wet is because this stuff can take a long time to dry. But I think in this case, that's not going to be much of a danger, because it's going to be such a thin layer. And I have used too much water, so I'm going to have to add another little pinch of paper mache to soak some of that up. It is dusty, so it's kind of a pain to use sometimes. I don't like breathing this stuff in. Although it's probably just newspapers, I'm not really sure. Okay, so we're getting there now. Now it's starting to get really clumpy, and it's wet, but it's not too wet. There's still some dry pieces of newspaper in there, so I want to make sure those all get covered and mixed in. And then we'll have an even gray, lumpy oatmeal textured bunch of celluclay, much of which unfortunately I'm going to wind up wasting. All right. So there you have it. That's what it looks like now at this point. Okay? Second thing you want to do is add some of this Elmer's glue. The reason you do this is because the celluclay, when it dries, will retract. It contracts, and so it'll try and pull itself away from the edges. If you have a nice bunch of glue in there, a good big dollop, sometimes that helps prevent that retraction. So here we go. I'm just going to put a bunch of glue in here. Here we go. I don't think you can ever put too much glue in there. And then we mix that in. Okay, so we're going to mix that in really, really well. All right, so now we've got a gluey, oatmeal-y lump of gray goo. Okay? Now we're going to start carefully putting on the base. You do not want to get this on your figure. Okay? So you want to put tiny bits on at a time. Okay? And when we're done, we're going to wipe it off the edges, because we don't want the edges to get all gooped up. All right. We want to make sure not to get this on the character's feet, although I'm sure it's been a while since I've done this, so I'm sure I'm going to mess up and get it all over this guy, but you don't, okay? Don't do that. Don't be me. All right, so I'm going to push it up against his feet as close as I can get it, and try and get it under his feet, because there's a little space between his feet and the base, the plastic base of this figure. Wipe off the excess. Okay. Starting to look like he's on some sort of gray lunar surface, which is fine. Let's go ahead and look at the back side here. Got some empty spaces that I need to fill in. Don't worry about having it absolutely flat. You know, normal ground has dips and rises and everything, so you know, you don't have to make it all completely uniform or anything like that. You're looking for total coverage. You're looking to get it over every surface. That's your goal here. Okay, so now what you've got is a gray gooey mass, but no texture. So what I'm going to do first is I've got a bunch of stuff on the base. I've got some glue and water and everything. I'm going to try and wipe that off as best I can with a paper towel or with my finger. And I'm going to get that absolutely dry before I do the next step, okay? And you'll understand why once I get to the next step. So I'm just ripping off a piece of paper cloth here, or paper towel, and I'm trying to wipe it off. And now we're ready to go to the next step, which is surface texture, okay? Remember that sand and stuff you picked up off your driveway? This is where you use it, okay? I'm going to put this kind of at an angle over the tub, okay, that I'm using. Let me try and get this in camera. Over the tub that I'm using. And then we're just going to take pinches of this dirt and sand, and we're going to drop it in there, okay? I'm just going to drop some more on the other side. And I'm going to spin it around as I go. Don't worry if it gets on the character's feet or whatever. It will come off if you just blow gently, because hopefully you didn't get any glue on the character's boots or clothes or anything. If you got glue on their clothes, it's not that big of a problem either, because if you're using this Elmer's glue stuff, it's all water soluble. So you can always come back later once it's all dry and try and clean it up that way with a little bit of water and some gentle scrubbing. Now, what I'm going to do next is basically I'm going to gently with this paddle push this texture down into the paper mache, into the celluclay, and just make sure it sticks in. I'm going to put a couple of rocks in, like in the front, to take up that space right there. Okay, so there's one rock, and I'm going to look for another rock that'll work here. Let's see if I can find something. Wipe off the excess. Sorry, I'm getting out of camera and focus range. You're just going to have to deal with me, sorry. And then one or two more, maybe, you know, blowing it one or two more times just to make sure. Okay? All right, we're almost finished with this stage of the project. Okay, some of this stuff has actually gotten on his shoe, and so I am going to try and just gently, what I've done is taken a paper towel, torn off a piece, and then rolled it up really tightly, so there's just a little tiny narrow bit of paper towel at the end, and I'm just going to use that to kind of brush the sand and gunk off of his boots. Okay. At this point, you can try and put fake grass on there. For this particular one, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use a product that's basically, it's just it's horsehair, and it's used to simulate tall grass. So I'll go ahead and go and grab that material, and then I'll come back and show you how it's done. Okay, I'm back. I actually lied. Instead of the horsehair, I decided to go for this stuff, Coarse Turf by Woodland Scenics. It's really nice. Just to give you an idea of what we're going for, I brought out some other stuff that I've done in the past. So these are 15mm figures that I used to paint a lot of. And you can see I've used coarse woodland, or coarse turf is the green stuff on these figures. And the taller grass is the horsehair. And then I've got some rocks in there and some other kinds of grass products that I didn't actually bring to show you. So I'm trying to move the light around so you can get a better look at this. And I apologize, it's hard doing this kind of work close up. And over here we have kind of a sci-fi set of figures that I've worked on for a while and never really finished. But their counterparts I did finish. And in this case it's a much more urban setting. And all this is basically some 15 millimeter SAS commando figures that I've turned into science fiction kind of cyborg warriors. And then over here you have an M113 troop carrier, and you can see the tall grass clearly in this one. And I'm going to turn this one around so you can get a better look at the back side of it. And this was also done with celluclay, and you can see how the nice thing about celluclay is it gives you the ability to kind of push the vehicle into the ground and really make it look like that vehicle has torn up the turf and the ground and everything and has moved along. So this is one of my more favorite figures. And then from the back, this is just a look from the back at my my sci-fi little my sci-fi set of figures. So you're going to take your coarse turf. Now remember, the base is still wet and there's glue in there. So what you're going to do is knock some of this coarse turf out onto the workspace, and then you're going to just take little bits of it and put it in selective locations. It's not going to go all over the base, because these are going to represent little kind of weeds and shrubs. Okay, so again, you're going to work really carefully. I'm going to start on the back because it's a little bit easier to work with, and I'm going to put it right there, and I'm just going to try to push it into the surface over just a small area. And if it doesn't seem like it's sticking, don't worry about it. You can always put on a mixture of water and Elmer's glue and just let it soak in, and that'll make it stick, okay? Okay, and then we're going to put a little bit close to the rocks. And you don't want to make it look perfectly balanced, because you know what? In nature, things aren't perfectly balanced. You want big patches, small patches, all randomly scattered around. And it's easier, it sounds easier than it is, because once you get doing this, once you get going on this is your first time. I can't tell you how many times when I started out that I would do this and it would come out looking so even and so uniform that it just looked all wrong. So that's what we're looking at now, okay? You've got green kind of foliage at his feet in front of him, small patch, and a little bit of a larger patch in the back. I'll take some still shots just to make sure you can see this. And now we wait for something, for a project as small as this. It's really not going to take that long, and probably wait overnight and then it'll be done. Okay, so we've let it dry overnight, and I went ahead and woke up this morning and put the first coat of paint onto the scenery, and you can see it's all dark now. What I did was I basically took burnt umber enamel paint, thinned it out a little bit so it was really thin, and then painted all the dirt parts with that thinned burnt umber, and it makes it very dark. And then the grass, I took a dark green, thinned that out, and painted over all the grass and bush parts with the thin dark green. So now everything is really, really super dark, and the next step is to start making some of the highlights pop out by mixing lighter colors of the base colors. So I don't have any enamel to mix up white into the burnt umber, which means I can't do the next step using enamel paints. And the next step is basically dry brushing, a series of dry brushings of lighter and lighter shades of burnt umber and lighter shades of green. So unfortunately what I'm going to have to do is use oil paints, and that's what I've got right here, oil paints, white and burnt umber. And I'm going to have to use that, but oil paints take a long time to dry. So I'm not going to be able to show you the successive layers of shading as I get lighter and lighter. But I'll show you one layer of shading, and of both green and burnt umber, and you'll be able to see how just one layer of shading is going to make it start to pop. And what you're going to want to do is start like I'm doing and do one layer after another, let it dry between layers, and just get a little bit lighter each time until you get the kind of look that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and dry brush, and dry brushing is just basically you put some of the paint on your paintbrush and then you wipe off the paintbrush on a paper towel or a newspaper. You just keep wiping until there's almost no paint left on the brush. And it's especially important with oil colors because those tend to go a long way. So you want to wipe it all off like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and dry brush it and take some still shots and just show you the difference. Okay, so that's it. I've done a little bit of highlighting on the ground, not too much, so it's starting to pop out, but you have to do a lot more than that to make it really stand out. But hopefully with the still shots you'll get a better idea. So with the greens, you're going to want to add not just white to the green color, the base green color, but also a little bit of yellow, because plants tend to yellow also. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this little two-part lesson. Definitely click like and subscribe, and whatever you do, buy my books. Thanks.
His foe is dead, the worm of dread, and